Good morning all, and thank you for joining our webinar, Trade Show Sales, Test Yourself. My name is Netta Weinrib. I'm Head of Enterprise Marketing for Peppery, and I will host today's webcast. This is a good time to transfer over the mic to Udi, our host, Udi Ledergor.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Netta. It's wonderful to be here once again with Peppery's wonderful audience. We had a great time last time around where we talked about planning your trade show. We had I think, record attendance back then, and we have some of you folks back here today, so we hope to be just as interesting this time. Today we're going to be talking about planning your trade show, but not as in the booth itself as we discussed last time, but we'll be talking about pre-show marketing. We'll be going through some best practices there on email, social media, and other things that we really recommend you do from our experience. Then we're going to talk about the booth experience itself that you want to create in order to maximize sales. We'll be talking about some very specific trade show sales tactics that we've seen wonderful results from. After that, we're going to talk about sales execution at the actual trade show and finish off with post-show follow-up, which basically means how can we remain in touch with those who we met at the show, those who missed our meetings at the show, and those who we want to meet at the next trade show. So we've got a couple of surprises for you today to keep things alive and interesting. We're going to have, as Netta mentioned, a very quick poll at the end of the webinar. If you don't have a pen and paper next to you, I do suggest you grab one. We're going to have a few self-test quizzes along the way that I do recommend you note your grades along the webinar, and at the end of the webinar we're going to ask you to tally up those scores and see where you stand against your fellow trade show exhibitors here with us at the webinar. And I think at the end of this hour we'll all know where we stand in our readiness to present at our next trade show and what we need to do in order to be right up there with the A presenters. Finally, as you've probably seen by now, we've chosen a nice Olympics theme for today's webinar. That's because we want you all to bring home the gold from your next trade show booth. So without further ado, let's get started. And our first topic today is the pre-show marketing. So we're going to touch on a few topics in pre-show marketing, but let's just discuss the goal before we get there into the specific tactics. Our goal with the pre-show marketing is to let people know that we're going to be presenting, let people know what's going to be at our booth, why they should show up, what special offers they can expect, and in short, we want to start engaging with people, not wait till they meet us for the first time at the trade show booth, but actually give them reasons to come visit us and make sure that we're on their list or on their short list of the booth that they're going to make a must visit as part of their trip at the show. So one thing we want to do, which is very important, some of you I'm sure are already doing this, and for some of you this may be new, we want to build an email campaign. Now in order to build an email campaign, what we really need to do is first to build a list or a database. That's what the DB stands for. We want to build a database where the three main sectors in it are going to be new customers or prospects as of now, past customers, those are inactive customers that maybe we took an order or two from in the past, but they really haven't been responding or talking to us in the last few months or the last couple of years. And then there are existing customers who regularly place orders. So what we want to do is make sure that we have these three segments in our database, which we can address sometimes together, sometimes separately. For example, if you have past customers that you know enjoyed certain products, you may want to target them with offers to buy newer versions of those products, or if you have a special bundle on products that they bought in the past, that would probably be an appropriate offer. For new customers, you probably want to start offering them your best sellers or special packages for new customers. And again, for existing customers, you'll want to make sure to continue the product lines that you see have been working well with them. So let's go over a few specific practices for email marketing. So one thing we want to do is to turn prospects into customers. Okay, so the best way of doing this is sending them interesting information about the products we're going to be presenting at the trade show. There are a lot of things we can do with email marketing, but in order to fit into this hour that Netta gave me today, we're going to have to focus on the email campaigns that are pertinent to your upcoming trade show appearance. So one thing we want to do in order to turn prospects into customers is really to send them information about our best-selling products or those that are going to be on special sale at the show. We want to make sure that once we have those emails we're bringing them to the booth to see what we have to offer them. As I mentioned in the last slide, we want to keep in touch with past customers, try and lure them back to our booth, either because we have a special deal on stuff that they enjoyed last time, or we have something new that based on their past purchase we believe would be interesting to them. And of course we want to bring everyone to meet you at the show. If you're going to be handing out a small giveaway or creating a special freebie for them at the booth, which we'll discuss in a few slides, you may want to mention this in the pre-show campaign that you're sending out. It can definitely help bring more traffic to the booth. People know you're going to be giving away drinks or food or a massage or anything like that. You might want to mention that in your pre-show campaign. Okay, so we can offer anything from special deals, special discounts for new customers, launches of new products. Anything that you think would be a pulling point to bring people into your booth is worth mentioning in the email campaign. People expect to receive this as long as you don't overdo it. People are happy to receive offers. As far as timing, I would suggest doing this somewhere between 7 to 10 days before the show. I would send the first campaign. If you do that earlier than 10 days before the show, people aren't usually planning their detailed route for the show, so that would be a bit too early. And of course, if you do that too late, they may already be on their way and not opening all their emails. You may get an out-of-office reply if they're already left for the show. So I would say right about a week before a show is a good time to send these offers out. Okay, so here's our first self-assessment, guys. Where do you stand? Are you on the A list, which means you maintain a segmented database of customers, prospects, suspects, and past customers? Are you already using marketing automation to send out these emails and track your open rate and track the click-through rate and responses? Do you have specific campaigns set up for past customers and a different campaign set up for prospects? If you have that, go ahead and feel proud of yourself, and you can note down an A on your paper next to you. If you're anything away from there, don't worry about that. Just mark if you're a B, a C, or a D. You know what it takes now to be an A-list email campaigner ahead of your trade show. And at the end of the webinar, you'll see where you stand on your total readiness for the trade show. Don't worry, none of us are straight A's across the board. None of us were born that way in any way. But now that we know what it takes, and we'll go domain by domain how to prepare for your trade show, you'll know what it takes, and we'll give you all the tools you need to get there. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about for the pre-show campaign is social media. Social media has become a very important part of your brand building, and it's actually many brands' most popular means of communicating with your customers, with your prospects. So a few of the channels that you want to consider maintaining, depending on your exact market segment and where your customers are coming from. So things you want to consider is maintaining a Facebook page, a Twitter account. If your products tend to be very visual, you might want to consider Instagram, which is very popular with the younger, more photo-inclined audience. And then, of course, there's Pinterest, which is a lot more popular with women. Anything you have to do with handicraft is very, very popular on Pinterest. Anything from recipes to hobbies, you'll want to definitely maintain a Pinterest account. And once you've got these accounts set up, and don't worry if you don't have all 4 of them. If you don't have any, just pick one which is best for your audience, and just by asking 5 of your customers which social channels they most often hang around, you'll quickly find out if Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest is best for you. Start one, see how it goes, and then build on to the second and third if you have to. But don't worry if you're a small business and can't afford, because they do take a lot of maintenance more than actual money. They do take some time-consuming work. If you can't afford the resources to be on all channels, don't worry about that. Just start with one and see if you're getting the results that you like. Obviously, you can also outsource some of this work to agencies or get someone who's an expert to help you out with this. Now, the things that you want to showcase on your social channels are, first of all, your products. They're definitely, your products are going to be an important part of what you showcase, especially before a trade show. But make sure it's not all about your product, because that quickly gets boring. No one wants to constantly see in-your-face advertisement every single time your brand pops up in their feed. So you'll want to interweave that with other stories. Give them some valuable content. For example, showcase your customers. If your customers are succeeding with or without your products, That would be a great story to showcase there. Make your customer feel that you're proud of him. I'm sure you'll make him a loyal customer after you do that. And I'm sure his peers will be very happy to see one of their own succeeding in relation to your products, and that also strengthens your brand. In relation to the trade show that we're talking about, so obviously you want to mention your booth. You want to tell people which booth you're going to be at so they know where to find you. And any new campaign that you want to promote for the show, any bundles, any new customer packages, anything at all that's relevant that could pull people into your booth, you want to showcase that on your social channels as well as the email campaigns that we discussed earlier. Okay, so that's we're going to keep it short and sweet on social media. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover, but for those of us who are new to social media, these are really the basics you want to consider. Pick your channel, showcase your products, but interweave that with other valuable content. And ahead of the show, make sure you advertise your presence, where exactly you're going to be, and why should people come by and see you. So it's time for our pen and paper again. Where do you stand? Are you an A-list? Do you do it all? Do you have Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, anything that's relevant to your audience? Do you put special emphasis on the upcoming trade show promotions, on new products and product launches? If you are, definitely go ahead and jot down an A. You're definitely an A social marketer. If not, go ahead and find yourself. Are you a B, a C, or a D? Don't worry about it. A D if you haven't started using social media yet. It's never too late. And as I said, none of us are A-listers on all of these dimensions. So don't worry about that as long as you know where you stand and you can prioritize that for this coming year. Where do you want to be on social media? Okay. This brings us to number 3. Just to remind everyone where we are, we're still talking about the pre-show marketing, okay? So once we've figured out the email campaigns, the social media campaigns, the next thing, very, very important that we want to do is to craft our sales campaign, okay? This is the part where we actually decide what our business goals are for the show, okay? Going from left to right, we want to decide on our main business goals. Are we looking to maximize sales volume? Maybe in this case we have a new product that we have a big stock of and we need to liquidate that, so we want to introduce a new product and set a goal for that specific product. Are there certain retailers that you haven't been selling enough to that you want to meet with at the show? You'll want to make a list of those and add that to your list of goals. So these are obviously just a sample list. You can put your own list together, but this is really where we recommend you start, by defining your main business goal, and then from that you want to craft campaigns that optimize for those business goals. So here's an example. If we want to maximize sales volume, then we want to consider things like bundling. So rather than letting people pick and choose a la carte, we can bundle a few products for them together. That will usually up the average sales price or average deal size for the show. So that's one thing we can do. Upselling and cross-selling for new and existing customers is always a great option for maximizing your sales volume. You can introduce a discount for a new product launch if you want to quickly liquidate specific stock, or not necessarily a new product. If you have an old product which is going to be outdated soon, you might want to liquidate that at the show and set up a campaign to do exactly that, if that's your business goal that you want to meet. Now we have several ways of promoting these programs. So one of the things we want to do is mention them in the email campaigns and the social media campaigns that we discussed. Obviously, you'll want them on your website if you use that as part of your trade show promotion, and you want to make sure you have flyers or postcards and literature at the booth itself. So you might want to mention that on the graphics, on the graphic panels of the booth. You want to make sure that your entire booth staff is briefed. I usually do this every morning before we open the show. I brief the staff about today's specials. They know exactly what they need to offer, and if you meet the business goal before the end of the show, say it's a 5-day show and on day 3 you're done liquidating the product that you wanted, make sure on day 4 to give them a new goal of what we're selling today. So you don't want them to try selling something on the floor that we just ran out of. Okay, so this is the basic process of crafting your sales campaigns. We're going to get to actually how we work them on the floor, so don't worry if that's not entirely clear at this point yet. Okay, moving right along. Time for that pen and paper again. Where do you rate yourself on preparing sales campaign? Is this something that you do on a regular basis? Do you know what your primary business goal for your next trade show is? Have you set up campaigns that if they succeed will optimize that business goal for you? Have you briefed your booth staff on what they need to do every day at the show to help you meet that goal? If you have, then you're definitely in the A list for sales campaigns. Go ahead and give yourself an A. If you're not, go ahead and find yourself, are you a B, a C, or a D? Don't worry about it. Just jot down where you are, and we'll see how we can help you improve later on. Okay. Moving right along, we're done with the first part, which is the pre-show marketing. Okay, we talked about email marketing, social media marketing, and setting up sales campaigns. We're now at the booth. Okay, congratulations, we made it to the booth, and we have two main sections to talk about at the booth. The first one is going to be the booth experience that you want to create. Okay, so let's talk about a few aspects of creating a welcoming booth experience that will keep people there. First of all, bring them in, keep them there, and allow them to engage with you and close sales. So one thing we want to do is make them feel welcomed. There are a few ways of doing this. One thing is having a greeter or host. You know that guy that when you walk into a Gap store or a Walmart store and says, "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" Or "Enjoy your time here," or helps direct you to somewhere, someone who's ready to give you service and isn't currently sitting with another customer. So consider having someone who does exactly that, just like a host at a restaurant. That takes you to the next available table. So if you've got a busy booth, and I'm sure many of you do have busy booths, and not everyone's going to be free, and it's not always clear people should go stand, have a greeter do that for them. I'm sure that'll make a difference in the experience and get a lot more engagement with your booth visitors. They'll be much happier when they leave as well. You want to make sure that there's fast onboarding of new customers. So one way of doing the traditional way is filling out a lot of forms and taking all the details and sending them paperwork the next day. Another thing you want to do is consider using an online catalog, and we'll see a bit more on that a little bit later today. An online catalog allows you to very quickly take in the new customer details, showing the products that are relevant to him, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So you might want to consider using electronics and software to speed up your new customer onboarding. The next thing, which I hinted to earlier, is creating a memorable experience. So things like offering food or beverages, just make sure they don't clash with anything that the organizer is already offering. So for example, if there's a big complimentary coffee stand next to your booth, coffee is not going to be a big crowd puller. So make sure you coordinate that with the organizers and give something like soft drinks or non-alcoholic cocktails if these are the morning hours. You can offer something totally different like a shoe shine or a massage, or anything that will help your visitors take the load off and relax for a few minutes and actually anticipate walking into your booth. Make it a different experience than all the booths next to you. It's really easy if you just put a little bit of thought into it, because anyone who's been to a trade show, I'm sure you'll agree, has seen this. All booths essentially look almost exactly the same because people really put too little thought into them. So if you want to be the guy who puts in the thought of how can I make my visitor feel special and give them a different experience, just go ahead and do that. Almost anything you do, anything at all, will give that different experience that you're looking for, just because everyone else is not putting that effort in that you are. Okay. Another cool thing to do, we all know the cliche of the real estate agent that comes 15 minutes early to the house that he needs to show and puts some vanilla in the oven and switches it on for 5 minutes, because that creates a sort of smell of home. So you can do that at a trade show, either with vanilla or by just bringing fresh baked goods with cinnamon, or freshly ground coffee, or freshly popped popcorn, lots of butter, thanks. That'll create a smell that will definitely draw people into the booth. These are all smells that we crave, that we want to follow, and we want to be part of this experience. So imagine if you've got that booth that smells like popcorn, everyone will be talking about you. Okay, let's take it to the next thing, and let's talk about booth staffing. Okay, here's an idea that maybe some of you are already doing, maybe some of you this will be a first for. One great practice that we've seen work very well at sales shows is dividing your staff into those who are best at hunting and those who are best at farming. Now, what do we mean by that? The hunters are the ones that are going to be standing at the perimeter of the booth or just outside the booth, close enough so the organizers don't kick you off the floor, because they don't like exhibitors walking around and soliciting in customers. So you want to be at the perimeter of your booth, and you want to greet people and pull people in. And these are the people, you know who they are on your staff. They're the ones who feel most comfortable smiling to strangers, taking a lot of rejections throughout the day, but they're essentially good at creating that initial connection and bringing people in. Now, these hunters can be even temporary local staff because they don't have to know a lot about your products. You can give them a single opening, welcoming sentence to say if they need to. But the job of these people is essentially to bring in the prospects from outside to the inside of the booth. And then within the booth, you want to have the farmers. These are the people who are your product experts. They know how to match the best product offering to every prospect that comes in. They know how to work your software that you're going to be using at the booth. So they're sitting there with their paperwork, their software, and they're bringing in the customers that the hunters brought in for them. They're sitting with them, and they're taking orders, and they're taking their details. Okay, so this is one way to really take advantage or full advantage of your best people by giving them the job that's right for them, and really do consider bringing in local staff or hostesses to do the hunting jobs. Sometimes you can get relatively inexpensive, very attractive, trained professionals to stand outside your booth and bring people in that can really help you, especially if you're limited on staff, or if you live far away from where the trade show is taking place. You don't have to fly in all the staff that you need. Definitely consider hiring some local staff to help you do the hunting part. Okay, so where do you stand on your booth experience? Again, pull out your pen and paper. If you're already dividing your staff into hunters and farmers, even unofficially, it doesn't have to be as strict as I explained it, to deal with the prospects and customers. If you're creating a memorable booth experience with food or beverage or giveaways or some sort of experience that people are going to be talking about, definitely give yourself an A in this department. If you're not there yet, why don't you have a look? If you're doing one of them, you're probably a B or C. If you're not doing any of that yet, you're still a D, but there's a lot of room for growth and definitely an opportunity to create something memorable here. So this is something you'll want to jot down, and we're getting close to summing up all your grades at the end here. So that is the booth experience. Now, the second part of what we're doing at the booth, of course, is sales execution. So let's talk about sales execution. Remember those campaigns that we set up? This is where they do their magic. So, excuse me. So here's what we want to do at the booth. We talked about engaging customers outside the booth. We want to give them a reason to come in, whether it's the cinnamon buns that you're giving away, whether it's the shoe shine or anything that you're doing, and of course the products on display. Let's not forget those. We bring them in. We want to ask what they need. We want to listen to them, not just show them our best-selling product or our most profitable product. We want to start by listening to what their needs are, what they need in their stores this year. And then we want to very quickly take their details and pinpoint the best products with the highest likelihood of them buying. So how do we do that? Of course, some of your sales pros will have it all in their heads. They'll be able to match the exact products to the exact people, but for those younger or newer salespeople, or if you've got an exceptionally large catalog, software is probably what you want to use for this. Some of you are probably using Excel sheets, which is a great way to start, but if you want to do something visual, and we'll see some examples a bit later on, you'll want to use software and online catalog at this point, where just by typing in the type of customer you have, you can filter the types of products you want to show him. You can see what's available in stock, and we'll see some examples of that a little bit later. Okay, so you want to expedite that experience, because remember, people at trade show, they're busy. They have a dozen meetings set up at other booths. They want to see everything, and time is short, and they really don't have time to see all your product offering, so you want to be able to quickly show them what's most relevant to them. Okay, that was a short one. So where do you stand on new customer acquisition? Do you have goals for new customer acquisition? Do you use introductory pricing to give them an incentive to buy from you for the first time? Are you using electronic interactive catalogs? Can you capture new customers directly into your sales system while you're at the show? Or do you just take a whole bunch of paperwork and then sit for 2 weeks shaking your head back at the office trying to figure out the spelling of someone's email address that was quickly jotted on a form while at the show? If you're already doing all of that, you're definitely an A-lister here, and that's a great place to be. If you're not, go ahead and check. Do you meet the B, C, or the D criteria? And you want to jot that next to you on your new customer acquisition. Okay? So we talked about the pre-show marketing so far. Remember, email marketing, social media marketing, creating your sales campaigns. The next two topics we talked about were creating the customer experience, and the last one we just talked about was driving sales at the booth. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is order taking. Okay, we want to save time here. So we want to save time and using an e-catalog curated especially for the show. So we know who the visitors are going to be at the show. We know which products they usually come to buy. We can show a filtered catalog by only showing them the products that they're most likely to buy and not wasting their time on other products. We can obviously suggest the promotions that we set up in advance. Remember those? We can even use some of the software and devices available today to scan the barcodes on the products at our booth and quickly put those into order forms. Okay, so there's no manual work here. Everything can be done electronically today, and if you're not there yet, in a couple of years, you're going to have to be there anyway. So might as well start early and gain a competitive advantage. If you are considering or evaluating different online catalogs for using at shows, you want to check that the solution that you're going for can work both online and offline. All of them obviously work online, but that's not a situation you always have at a trade show. Okay, many trade shows, and those of you who have been will identify with what I'm about to say, many trade shows have an unstable internet connection. You can't always get a cable connection to the booth, and the Wi-Fi connection tends to be very crowded, very sketchy. You cannot rely on that to work at a critical moment where you're taking a new order. You want to make sure that your tablets, computers, mobile phones, everything you're using at the booth with your electronic software can actually work offline as well as online and provide a seamless, streamlined experience for you and the customers at the booth. Okay, you can obviously use these electronic catalogs to impress your customers by showing them what's in stock right now, how many do you have of the product that they want delivered next week, and you can even submit the order while you're at the show, so your back office or warehouse can start working on delivering that even while you're at the show. And obviously you can't do that with pieces of paper, but you can do that if you use dedicated software. Just to finalize this part before we move on, using electronic catalogs can really help you eliminate a lot of errors by eliminating a lot of the paperwork, a lot of guesswork, what's in stock, what's not. You can immediately print out order confirmation and send an email to the customer while he's at the booth with you. That's sure to wow many of our customers that are not doing business that way. And as I mentioned, one of the probably most important things is that your warehouse can start working on delivering that while you're still at the show taking additional orders. Okay, here's what Peppery's electronic catalog looks like. Again, it's one of the leading online catalogs in the category. You can see very quickly on the left that everything can be branded to your exact brand. Here on the right, we can see that it basically looks like an e-commerce site, although this is an actual wholesale B2B online catalog meant to be used at trade shows. So you can quickly flip through different models, different colors, see the wholesale price, see exactly how many remain in stock, and take the order right there at the booth. You get a complete view of your customers, so if a customer walks into the booth, you immediately pull up their past orders and can duplicate that order and take in new orders based on past orders, saving you and the customer a lot of time, which I'm sure they'll appreciate. You can set the delivery date and get your warehouse working on shipping that straight away while you're still at the show. And on the screen on the right, we see that the order taking is very, very simple, very, very visual, so everyone understands what they're buying, what model they're getting, when they're getting it, and how much they're paying for it. It looks just like a B2C shopping cart, but this is an actual wholesale order taking software for your next trade show booth. Okay, so where do you stand on order taking? Are you already using a mobile app for taking your orders? Are you already scanning barcodes at your trade show booth? It may sound like sci-fi, but really you could get up and running with this in a few hours if you're not there yet. If you are evaluating or already using an online catalog, does it work offline as well as it does online, so you can take orders even when there's no internet connection? If you're doing all that, if you can provide immediate order confirmation while at the show, that definitely makes you an A-lister in our book. So go ahead and give yourself an A in the order taking category. If you're not, go ahead and find yourself within the B's, C's, or D's. Don't worry, there's still chances to make up. We're not done yet. Okay, so if everyone's written their score on order taking, let's move on. And we're getting to the last part of today's webinar, and that is the post-show follow-up. This is the last part before we go into Q&A, so make sure to stick around if you have questions and we see them piling up. You can still type them in your questions panel on the right of your screen. go ahead and do that if you haven't done so yet. So before we get to Q&A, let's talk about the post-show follow-up, and then we'll wrap up with a couple of last self-assessments. Okay. So one of the last best practices I want to talk about is continuously engaging with your customers and prospects. So the show has ended, okay? You successfully took orders. You did everything we talked about at the show. What do we do now? First of all, send out an email and thank people for visiting you at the booth. Why don't you give them a last-minute, time-limited voucher that they can use? So you can do this either send the same offer to everyone. That's the easiest. Or if you want to get fancy, look at what product categories each customer bought and segment your campaign so you can send them a voucher within the category that they already purchased. So for example, if someone has bought a whole stock of umbrellas, but all of them are blue, go ahead and send them a voucher for red umbrellas, okay? And obviously you can take this example to any direction you have to, but you get the point. People will appreciate a very relevant offer and a timely offer. So if they just came back from a show buying umbrellas, they're probably in the market for umbrellas. And make sure you offer them something that's relevant to them in terms of product description, in terms of price point. And don't forget to make it time limited and even mention that stocks are limited. You want to create a perception here of scarcity and of time pressure. So you want them to make the decision within the next few days from the show. Don't leave these offers hanging out there unlimited, because that will not motivate people to take them up right after the show. Okay, feel free to give them giveaways or vouchers for the next purchase or anything that will keep the conversation going with them. Another group of people that we want to meet are missed meetings. If you set up meetings and they didn't show up at the show, you can email them after the show and say, hey, I'm sorry I missed you. You were probably too busy to show up. Let's get on the phone. You can still enjoy the show specials that you missed last week. So all of this you can do after the show. What you want to make sure is that before you leave for the show, you've decided on your post-show campaign, you've set all this up so you have the email wording ready, you know what offers you want to make them. Because what usually happens after the show, it takes you a couple of days to get back. You're winding down from the show. The last thing you want to think of is being creative and getting in the mood for setting up a new campaign. So you want to do this before the show, so you can do this on automatic, almost on an autopilot mode right after the show. Now this is relevant for both after the show and an ongoing basis until the next show. You want to continue adding new leads from social media, from email campaigns, from actual paying customers. You want to collect qualifying information that will help you segment. So you know if someone's in the market for umbrellas and someone else is in the market for shoes, you want to make sure to segment them in the database so you know which offers are most relevant to send them. And then we want to use social promotions to find new customers. Think of creative ideas like giving vouchers to your customers for bringing new customers or for sharing posts on your social media channels. And the database that we see here on the right is the same one that we talked about in the beginning. You want to be able to segment on the minimum basis of new customers versus past customers versus existing customers, because usually you'll find that the offers you want to make to these three different audiences are quite different, and nothing is worse than receiving an offer that you realize was sent out on a mass scale to everyone in the database, and this is totally irrelevant to you. If I've never sold umbrellas and I'm not in the market of selling umbrellas, why is this wholesaler sending me his latest sale on umbrellas? I'm not going to buy, and what's going to happen is I'm probably going to unsubscribe from this wholesaler's list, which means that you've lost me forever now. So you definitely want to go through the trouble of segmenting your audience, and when in doubt, send fewer emails, but make sure they're very relevant to the recipients rather than sending out every offer you have to everyone in your database, because that's going to quickly wipe out your list. People are going to unsubscribe if they don't receive customized offers, and you're becoming more of a nuisance than someone providing them value. Okay. So the last best practice we're talking about here is the missed meeting opportunities. We talked about that briefly a couple of slides ago. For existing customers, you can send them a limited time quote based on their past orders and show them the promotions that they missed at the show. You can send them a link to your online catalog. If you're already using one of the software options that we talked about earlier, you have an online catalog, you can send them directly to the show catalog even if they missed you at the show. you can either send them to the full catalog or to the show catalog where they can still enjoy for a limited time that you specify the show specials that they missed. Okay, so if we made it to here, and a couple of hundred of you have made it to here, let's go ahead and analyze your results. Okay, so before we get to tallying up your scores, let's talk about the last thing, which is analyzing the show results. So in the show results, we want to look at our sales success. What was our average order size? What were the total sales by product? What were the total sales by customer? These are things that you want to collect show after show after show, and you want to probably plot them either using software that does it for you, or if you're doing it manually in an Excel sheet, you want to plot these numbers and see that your general direction is that of improvement. If your average order size is declining from show to show, you want to understand why. What are we doing wrong? Are we bundling the wrong products together? Are the show specials this year not as attractive as the one that we introduced last year? So the only way that we're going to improve on these very important metrics is by plotting them down year after year, making sure we understand what our business goal is, setting up the right sales campaign, and then recording very carefully the results. Okay, and again, we can do this either manually, the hard way, or we can use software that does this for us. To evaluate the success of our pre-show marketing and post-show marketing campaigns, we should look at things like how many new customers did we achieve at this show versus existing customers? How effective were the sales campaigns that we set up? Did people bite on the bait that we actually gave them? Did they go for the bundles that we suggest, or did we put together the wrong bundles and almost no one bought those bundles? So this is something we want to look at. It will help us improve from show to show and actually increase our ROI, or return on investment, from each and every show that we go to. The only way to do that is to set up the metrics, monitor them after the show, and figure out post-mortem what went wrong, what worked well, what should we repeat at the next show, and what do we want to improve for the next show. Okay, the last thing we want to look at is probably total sales by sales rep. You want to see who your top performers are, make sure those are the ones taking the strategic customers, and those who are maybe at the bottom of your list for a certain trade show, you might want to leave them back at the office next time around. Okay, I did mention return on investment, so I feel this is important just to show this very simple formula. If you're not already doing this, you do want to calculate your return on investment for the show, because there's so many shows to go to and you can't each and every one of them. So how do you know which ones are best for your business? So here's the simple formula that I suggest. What you want to do is tally up the sales that you made at the show, okay, which are going to be a big bulk of sales that you made at the show. And then don't forget to add to that all the future sales that you can track back to that show. So if you met Bob for the first time at a certain show, you want to tally up not only the sales that you got at the show, but everything that happened, say, 12 months after the show. You want to attribute that to the same trade show, because that's where you met Bob for the first time. Had you not appeared at that trade show, you would have probably never met Bob and never turned him into a customer. So put together the at-show sales and the future sales that originated at the show. That is your total sales from the show. And from that, you want to deduct the investment you made in the show. How much did you pay in total for renting the booth space, for designing and producing the booth, for flying all the people there, the hotel, the travel costs, everything you put into the show, the giveaways, the food that you gave away at the booth, everything you used at the booth goes into the investment. And once you deduct that, you get to the trade show ROI. And this is the number, ROI again standing for return on investment. This is the number you want to compare not only between trade shows within a year, but also between the same trade show year after year. You want to make sure that you're at least keeping your ROI, if not increasing it. Sometimes you do see that ROI on a certain trade show is in decline from year to year. This happens because sometimes trade shows, the trade show organizers themselves are not doing as good a job as they used to do, so they're drawing in less of a crowd. And sometimes, and for different reasons, certain regions fall in popularity. You want to be able to track your ROI on different shows, because at the end of the day, your resources for going to trade shows are limited. You want to make sure that you're using them where you get the most bang for your bucks. So you want to calculate trade show ROI and compare within the same year different shows which brought in more ROI. So and between years, how is a certain trade show doing? Is the ROI increasing or declining? This will help you make better decisions about allocating your marketing budget next year at trade shows. Okay, so this is the last assessment before we tally everything up. These are the post-show activities. Where do you stand? Are you following up on missed opportunities and meetings by sending them an email to catch up with after the show? Are you sending quotes to existing customers to make sure they don't miss out on the show deals? Are you enriching your database in between shows? Are you measuring and tracking your return on investment, doing e-marketing and doing social media marketing to engage? If you're doing all of this, kudos to you. You definitely earned this A. This was a tough one to achieve. You're definitely an A here. If you're not, don't worry about it. Go ahead and find yourself within the B, C, or D categories. Okay, so if everyone's got that down, we're ready to sum it all up. Go ahead and count your A's. Go ahead and count your B's, count your C's, and count your D's. And now go ahead and find yourself. If you're at the top 5%, you should have at least 6 A's by now. You're in the best in class, really. That's a wonderful place to be in. It means you're using all the latest technologies, best practices. You're training your booth staff as you should. You're setting up your campaigns. You're following up. You're right where you want to be. If you're within the top 20%, don't worry about that. You're still in a wonderful place. You're way ahead of most people in the business. And if you're not, if you've got at least 5 A's or B's or C's, you're definitely competent, but you know what you need to do to become an A player. Don't worry if you're still in the D category, okay? We all started there. No one was born doing all of this. If you're still a novice at trade shows, you've seen what it takes to be an A-lister and get to the top 5%. It may take you a couple of shows to get there, but if you follow the steps that we talked about today, there's no reason that within a few shows you won't be at the top 5% performers. And you know what? Even if you're at the top 10% or 20%, you're still going to be doing a lot better than the trade show booths next to you. And I'm sure you're going to be seeing the results in the numbers that you bring home at the end of the day. So at this point, I'm going to go back to Netta, who's going to talk with us right into the Q&A session. Netta, are you with us?
Yes, here I am. So first, before we move on to the Q&A session, I'd like to ask you guys to take our poll and let us know how you fared in our Test Yourself webinar. Okay, so I see half of you have answered. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to, I'm really curious to see how well you've done. 10 more seconds, and then we'll go to Udi, get back to Udi for the Q&A session. I have some very interesting questions lined up for Udi. Udi, are you ready for my questions?
I was born ready.
Okay. I think that was a very interesting webinar. I really enjoyed it. Just a couple words about Peppery. Udi was kind to mention Peppery during the webinar. Peppery is not only doing software for trade shows, Peppery is the mobile B2B sales platform. We pride ourselves of being very or extremely agile or extremely flexible, which enables you guys to be agile, meaning that you can see where your business is going, change what you're doing based on where the business is going, and do it all with one solution, a solution that covers B2B order taking at trade shows and at the retailers, and online order taking by distributors and other partners that you have and retailers. Without further ado, I'd give the mic back to Udi, who's going to answer a few of your questions.
Okay, so I'm going to take a couple of questions. Sure, thanks, Netta. I'm going to take a couple of questions about the pre-show marketing, and then if you'd like to take a couple of the questions, because we do have quite a few related to the Peppery offering that we mentioned, I'm going to let you, being the expert on the topic, take those if that's okay with you. Okay.
So, Udi, we have a question here about how often should you post on social media before the show?
Great. Great. So my answer here I'm going to break down to two. First of all, each social media channel has their sort of pace and their own character. So for example, Facebook is usually a place where you want to post at least twice a week to remain relevant. Those who are very active will post even twice a day, which is fine. Okay, if you look at Facebook pages of news sites like CNN, they're going to post every hour or so. But you do want to be relevant. So for example, if you cannot afford to maintain a Facebook page that you're posting on at least twice a week, don't do it. Don't set up a Facebook page that someone goes into and sees that your last post was 2 months ago. That just looks lame, it looks unprofessional, and you really have no business being on Facebook if you can't do that. So having said that, you want to learn sort of the ins and outs of every social media channel. The second thing I want to say is it really all comes back to how often can you provide value to your listeners. And what do I mean by that? Let me switch to email marketing to give the example there. I'm often asked, how often should I email customers about new offers? So I say, as long as you have a valuable offer that's relevant and interesting and immediately applicable, go ahead and send out as many emails as you need. If you consider people who sign up for newsletters like Groupon, they're expecting to get an email every single day, and they have a relatively low unsubscribe rate. So as long as people are set up with expectations to how often they're going to receive emails from you, and the emails that you send out really do provide value by presenting relevant, valuable offers for those specific segmented audience, go ahead and send out as often as you need. But beware, if you're not segmenting and you're sending out the same mass email to everyone on your list, you're going to burn out your list very quickly, even if you send out an email just once a month. If I receive 3 consecutive emails from you and they're about products that I never carry and you should have known that, I'm going to unsubscribe from your list. So don't go there. Your list is very, very valuable. Once someone unsubscribes, you've lost them forever unless they subscribe again, which is very difficult to get them to do. So you want to make sure that even if it's at the expense of sending fewer emails, you want to only send out relevant emails that provide real value to the recipients of every specific email. And then on social channels, as I said, as long as you can provide value, keep posting, but also be aware of what's customary for every social channel. So for example, Twitter is a certain type of posts and a certain frequency, and Facebook is kind of different, tends to be more visual. Instagram, of course, is very, very visual. Pinterest has its own set of rules. You want to get someone, either learn it yourself, and you can learn it yourself online. There are guides to posting on every one of the channels, which you can very easily learn, or get someone who knows how to do it and can teach you or set things up and do it for you. Okay, so that would be my answer on the frequency of posting. There really is no good answer as long as you continue to provide value. Keep posting and sending as often as you like. Okay, what's up next, Neta?
Well, people are questioning whether it's really important for a B2B company to do social media. We're B2B. We don't want to let our competitors see what we're doing. You know, why do we need to do social media?
That's a great question. That is a great question. So here's what I would say. You know, research shows today that for a typical B2B buyer, the buyer does about 70% of his buyer's journey or research about the vendor before he ever approaches the vendor. And what does that mean? That means that if we're not providing that information before they pick up the phone and call us or fill out a form on our website, they're getting that information from someplace else. And if we're not making that information about us available on social media, on our website, in industry forums, at trade shows, and everywhere else, they're going to get that information from other vendors. They're going to go to other vendors. If we don't define the conversation about us and provide all the information that customers are looking for in order to be able to decide that we're the right vendor for them, they're never going to pick up the phone. That information has to be out there. 15 years ago, you could have said, yeah, let's just keep everything secret. You know, we have our brand and industry. People are going to come to us anyway. Today, that's not the way things work. Okay, just like it reminds me of stores who don't allow customers to post negative reviews about them. Those customers are just going to, that's a bad idea, not allowing customers to post negative reviews about you, because if you don't allow them to do that in a controlled environment where you can quickly respond, they're going to find somewhere else like Yelp and go and write their negative review there where you have zero control over it, and that's going to create a nightmare for you. And there are plenty of examples like that out on the net. So to circle back to the answer to the original question, I think you definitely have to be on social media. You definitely have to have a website because customers are looking for you. If they don't find you there, they either think you're a small, unstable business. They might think that you're out of business. They might never even find you. And the last thing to do is go and see what kind of social media and website presence your competitors have. If your competitors have a well set up website, they're on all the social channels, that means that their customers are engaging with them there. Don't you want to be there as well?
Okay, Woody, we have another, I think our last question is, well, you know, we're at the trade show, we're meeting our customers, but we don't have all the information that we normally see in front of us when we go to visit customers. You know, usually when I go to visit a customer, I see all the information on the ERP, I go to the meeting, I know what's going on. At the trade show, there's so many customers visiting us, it's impossible for me to remember what's going on with each and every one of the customers. What can I do? How do I deal with all this information during a trade show? Do I just print it out, or do I have like my little notes? What do I do at a trade show?
Well, I'd say if you're a relatively small business, you know, you have a relatively small number of returning customers, I think the manual solution can definitely suffice. You can print out the information, come with your folders. You probably, if you're just a few people working in the business, you probably know a lot of the customers personally, and you can deal with that, and that would be enough. If you're a big business or striving to be a big business, and you're growing and you have more customers than you can memorize and you can't memorize their orders, I would definitely recommend looking at one of the software solutions available today, like Peppery, and using that software on site. As soon as you're online, that software syncs back to your back office, so you know all the past orders of the customer, you know exactly what they ordered, what they're usually looking for, when was the last time they paid. You know all of this, and you can pull it up and impress your customer and take their order online. As we mentioned, it's important when looking at those software solutions that they work offline as well, because remember, Wi-Fi at trade shows is never stable, and even if you have a backup connection, you don't want to use software that relies 100% on an online internet connection. So make sure that you do look at software solutions like Peppery that will allow you to pull up all the past orders, all the past history, and really hone in on the most relevant offers for each and every client that you meet at the show.
Okay, cool. I think this was the last question that we have time for. I'd like to thank Udi for this excellent webinar. I hope you all have enjoyed it. We will send out the recording of the webinar later this week, and keep in touch. Thank you, Udi. Have a nice evening.
Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day.
Have a nice day. Bye.